Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story: a federal grand jury in Ohio has indicted 4 Chinese pharmaceutical companies and 22 Chinese nationals for their roles in bringing fentanyl to the U.S. Senators and experts emphasize that it's critical for the U.S. to stay ahead of China in the space race. We bring you the highlights from a recent hearing. A hot mic caught China's and Russia's leaders talking about using organ transplants for longevity. For the past 2 decades, the Chinese Communist regime has been conducting forced organ harvesting from prisoners of conscience. We bring on a panel to discuss.
We are training Chinese physicians who will likely go back and commit these murders.
Before we dive into today's news, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter using the link down below. In tomorrow's newsletter, we break down this week's summit in China, where China, Russia, and India signaled growing coordination to challenge the West. It drops Friday morning straight to your inbox. Don't miss it. A major drug case unfolds. A federal grand jury in Ohio has indicted 4 Chinese pharmaceutical companies and 22 Chinese nationals. They're being accused of taking part in an international drug trafficking and money laundering conspiracy. 3 U.S. citizens have also been indicted in connection with the case. Prosecutors say the network supplied illegal substances used to mix with fentanyl, making the drug more potent. It's been fueling the opioid epidemic in southern Ohio and beyond. They also said the Chinese companies knew these chemicals would be used in fentanyl mixtures. FBI Director Kash Patel says they have seized enough fentanyl powder to kill 70 million Americans and enough fentanyl pills to kill another 270,000. The transactions were often paid for with cryptocurrency. The U.S. Treasury also announced new sanctions against one of the companies and its representatives. Each year, tens of thousands of Americans die from fentanyl overdoses. Almost all fentanyl precursors behind the U.S. overdose crisis originate in China. Kash Patel says one of his first moves as FBI director was to target fentanyl sources in China. In an interview on Fox News, Patel said, quote, "We are going to suffocate the snake and we're going to cut off its head." A hot mic picked up China's and Russia's leaders discussing organ transplants on Wednesday. That's as the Chinese Communist regime has been conducting forced organ harvesting from prisoners of conscience. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley brings us the story.
Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese leader Xi Jinping caught on a hot mic discussing living to 150 years old through continuous organ transplants. It was caught while they were walking together during a military parade in Beijing on Wednesday. The moment comes as the Chinese Communist Party has been conducting widespread forced organ harvesting of prisoners of conscience. NTD's congressional correspondent Melina Wisecup asked House Speaker Mike Johnson about this incident, to which Johnson replied,
"We've heard some horrific stories of these organ transplants and all of this in China, that they take it from unwilling donors, okay, to put it mildly. And the fact that they were caught on a hot mic, first I've heard of that, is very telling. It tells you what their worldview is in contrast to ours. Speaking of evil.
A 2023 obituary of a former Chinese communist official, Gao Zhangxiang, says that he had replaced many organs in his body, and Gao himself said that many parts of his body are not his own anymore. The source of the organs remains a question. Human rights groups have found that the Chinese regime has been forcefully harvesting organs from prisoners of conscience for years, with no sign of stopping. A 2019 tribunal found that the CCP was primarily targeting the faith group Falun Gong. Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa, is a popular spiritual practice with meditative exercises and is based on the principles of truth, compassion, and tolerance. The CCP has been targeting them since July 1999. A couple bills in Congress are seeking to address this. That Falun Gong Protection Act, passed unanimously in the House back in May, it was introduced in the Senate by Senator Ted Cruz, but is still awaiting a vote. Last week, 10 state lawmakers sent letters to Senator Cruz expressing their support for the bill and urging him to push it through the Senate. One of the letters from State Representative Tom Oliverson reads, "The persecution of Falun Gong practitioners in China represents one of the most severe violations of human rights in modern times. For over 2 decades, people of faith have endured arbitrary detention, torture, and even forced organ harvesting simply because of their spiritual beliefs."
And they're subject to horrific practices, including organ harvesting. They literally capture practitioners of Falun Gong. They remove their organs and then they provide them either to transplant to other Chinese nationals, or they also find them the organs on the black market.
While we await action on the federal level, many states have already passed their own laws targeting this practice. Texas, Utah, Idaho, and Tennessee have passed laws barring insurance companies from covering transplant tourism in China. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jack Bradley, NTD News.
And for more on this, we spoke with Dr. Jessica Russo and Yanya Kellick. Dr. Russo is a mental health advisor and board member for Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting. And Jan is a senior editor at the Epoch Times and the host of American Thought Leaders. He's been reporting on forced organ harvesting for the past 20 years.
I think it was really stunning, and I think it was actually an inadvertent admission of what we have known to be happening since 2006. It is very clear that the Chinese government is harvesting organs from unwilling donors. And there was something back in 2019, this was about a 1-minute clip from a military hospital in China that made it very clear that top Chinese officials are getting multiple organs to prolong their lives. So we're hearing this again. And it was actually during the COVID pandemic where we heard something about someone in the top echelons of the CCP who had died and had multiple organs. So we know what's happening in China. The donation rate is extremely low. We know these are coming from unwilling people, their own citizens.
The London-based China Tribunal concluded in 2019 that Falun Gong practitioners were the primary victim group of forced organ harvesting in China. Now, this ties directly to the transplant industry that Xi has perhaps unwittingly put under the spotlight. Could you walk us through more of the China Tribunal's findings?
Well, the China Tribunal was extremely important. It was actually a comprehensive review of all the evidence that had already been found, and also finding, basically the experts that were out there and even some whistleblowers who hadn't come forth before to basically put together the comprehensive picture of what happened. It was, run by Sir Jeffrey Nice. It was something that he prosecuted Slobodan Milosevic back in the day. And it was done, wasn't done under legal authority, but it was done as if it were done under legal authority with kind of the highest bar for evidence. And just, a few of the things they found, the sort of the best estimates for the number of organs being transplanted, something 60 to 100,000 a year. And really with no real credible organ donation sources. We've got incredibly short wait times. People were going to China within 2 weeks and scheduling a heart transplant. So when someone's going to be dead. And this is not one instance. This is many instances. There's also this kind of massive infrastructure development that happened immediately after '99. So this is why that's relevant. The persecution of Falun Gong practitioners was initiated by the Chinese Communist Party in 1999. And there was already this killing of prisoners for organs happening. But what happens right at the time when the Falun Gong persecution begins, when the CCP starts that, is this massive, massive growth. To kind of illustrate it, I pulled a number here. I think in 1999, there were 22 liver transplant centers that existed in the country. By 2006, it was something like 500. So, just massive, massive growth, again, with no real credible organ donation source. So people just disappear. And no one imagined that something as horrible as this could actually be happening to them.
And Dr. Russo, House Speaker Mike Johnson telling NTD in response to the hot mic moment, quote, "It tells you where their worldview is in contrast to ours," adding, "If the leaders are talking about it, it should alarm us." What can we draw from these comments about the CCP's worldview?
They don't care about people. They have no ethics. The idea that we are working with them, that we have been trading with them since 2021, it's really unconscionable. It's so hard to believe that we would be working with such an inhumane government. I wouldn't even call them a government. This is a regime that's anti-human. So we really have to be careful. One of the things that really puts us in such a precarious position in the United States, as well as in many other Western countries, we are training Chinese physicians who will likely go back and commit these murders. And we have pharmaceutical companies in the West, primarily in the US actually, that are providing materials for China's transplants. And we have medical supply companies also providing materials and products for China's transplants. So we don't want to be complicit in this.
Well, Dr. Jessica Russo, Yanya Kellick, thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senators say that maintaining the lead over China in space is not just a race, but a matter of U.S. national security. NTD's correspondent Jason Blair reports on Wednesday's Senate hearing.
We are in a new space race with China. And if we fail, there will be a bad moon on the rise.
It's critical to our future economic and national security.
During a Senate hearing examining the race in space, the main theme was that the U.S. must maintain leadership over China.
If they get there first, we will see a global realignment that will impact our economy, our tax base, our ability to innovate, and our national security in terms of diplomacy and geopolitics that will affect security and many other aspects of our daily lives.
It is clear to me that the Chinese Communist Party is already employing its own integrated grand strategy for the Earth-Moon system, with only superficial distinction between civil, commercial, and national security activities, and all focused on a common purpose.
Senator Tim Sheehy questions whether NASA needs to make adjustments in order to stay ahead of the game.
And I'm very concerned that the bureaucracy of NASA, of which I love NASA, I'm a supporter, but we have to be honest with ourselves. Is the bureaucracy of NASA positioned to give us space dominance in the 21st century?
And on Tuesday, President Donald Trump emphasized the importance of keeping ahead of China and Russia in space while talking about the formation of Space Force from the Oval Office.
We were losing the race in space very badly to China and to Russia.
Senator Bernie Moreno brought up using America's private sector in order to compete with the Chinese regime.
And I think the advantage we have is that we have this strong, thriving private sector. How do we really integrate that to accomplish the mission that we all want?
I think that's a great point and a great question. I think we've got to, as an agency, NASA needs to build infrastructure that the private sector can see how they plug in and benefit from it. And then you get these naturally forming public-private partnerships.
Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
Coming up, President Trump is ordering the U.S. military to reform and get ready to deter China and Russia. That's the message echoed by the Pentagon chief after China's latest military show.
President Trump has charged us at the Defense Department to be prepared to rebuild our military in historic ways.
China's massive military parade showcased some new weapons. It's sparking questions about Beijing's combat capabilities and intentions toward Taiwan. Our expert weighs in.
The Pakistan Air Force say that the quality of all of the PRC's military goods are really deficient. They have huge problems with them.
That and more in just a minute here on China in Focus. And Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te warns of rising threats from China, calling for national solidarity among Taiwan's people. And we take a look at why his other remarks angered Beijing.
The current security environment is more severe than ever before.
Welcome back to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. President Trump isn't looking for conflict, but he ordered the Pentagon to reshape the U.S. military and stay ready to deter China and Russia. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth delivered that message after watching China's military parade. Here's the Pentagon chief speaking on Fox News Wednesday. Take a listen.
President Trump has charged us at the Defense Department to be prepared to rebuild our military in historic ways, to restore the warrior ethos and reestablish deterrence, not because we seek conflict. We do not. And we've been clear about that with China or Russia or others, but because by being prepared, you prevent it. Demonstrations of parades are fine, but they don't hopefully manifest in actually military conflict. So we know what they believe and what they're about. We also know how strong we are and the military advantages we have. They know that also. Our job's to maintain those military advantages in space, in the skies, in the sea, under the sea, and with long-range fires. All the capabilities we have, Golden Dome, which is something China knows they can't replicate.
Hegseth's comments come after President Trump's Truth Social post Tuesday, where he claimed leaders of China, Russia, and North Korea were conspiring against the U.S. China and Russia denied the accusation. And there are other developments following Trump's social media post. Trump reminded the Chinese regime leader that many U.S. soldiers fought for China's freedom, and many died on the battlefield. But Chinese state media outlets left that part out, focusing only on Trump's message wishing the Chinese people a great celebration. Why was that the case? One reason could be that U.S. troops never fought on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party. During World War II, the Taiwanese government, or the Republic of China, was China's legitimate government. It called on the U.S. to aid China in the war, and U.S. troops responded with immense support. Chinese media outlets treated Hegseth's comments in a similar manner. They only reported that the U.S. military isn't seeking conflict with China, leaving out the Pentagon's efforts to boost readiness and deterrence against China. China's military parade on Wednesday showcased new weapons. It's raising speculation over whether Beijing is prepared for a possible invasion of Taiwan. At the same time, President Trump says the U.S. holds incredible cards that could cripple Communist China if needed. We asked Gregory Copley, president of the International Strategic Studies Association, whether Beijing's military is really ready to make a move. Gregory, this is a propaganda parade mostly. It's a lot of money being poured into it, mostly for the internal domestic audience inside China. As you mentioned, there's a lot of, internal unrest. At the same time, there's a lot of people pointing to, say, the new weapons or weapons advancements we could be seeing at this parade as a potential indicator of when that potential Taiwanese invasion might happen. On the other hand, though, you did have President Trump recently say that the U.S. has, quote, incredible cards when it comes to China that could effectively destroy Communist China. How are you reading that? Would now be the time to act in terms of, the U.S. and the freedom-loving countries?
Well, the PLA and the Communist Party of China do not have anything like the capability at this stage to invade and conquer the Republic of China on Taiwan. They could obliterate all life on Taiwan with a massive array of missiles if they wanted, but even that would probably lead to the downfall of the Communist Party of China, because it wouldn't have achieved anything for them, and it would invite a huge international retaliation. But the reality is that the PRC is gaining incredibly in some areas of defense technology. There's no question about that. The new Chinese version, PRC version of the US AMRAAM missile was used by the Pakistan Air Force recently to great effect against the Indian Air Force. However, the Pakistani military overall, and particularly the Pakistan Air Force, say that the quality of all of the PRC's military goods are really deficient. They have huge problems with them. They don't like them. They don't rely on them. They're looking for Western-supported equipment where they can. And so they indicate that what we saw in the Indo-Pakistani conflict recently was not indicative of a broad PRC sense of competence or overwhelming power. Basically, the PLA lacks the force structure to invade Taiwan. Secondly, it doesn't have the generals to do it, and that's exemplified by the fact that we don't have that Grand Marshal already known for the parade tomorrow. They've lost so many generals, and these are people who have not been purged by Xi. They've been Xi supporters purged by the old guard, if you like, in the Central Committee and Politburo against Xi. They've purged his allies, Basically, we see the morale non-existent in the PLA. We see the capabilities deteriorating and questionable in most areas. There's no command structure there. So the only problem we might see is a desperate act by either Xi Jinping, or when Xi Jinping is finally formally removed or sidelined, by someone who is looking to distract the public of mainland China away from insurrection. But I don't think that will work. I think it's too late for that as well. But bad things can happen in periods of disruption. We can only hope that the Communist Party will be brought down by these increasing array of demonstrations, so that we can get back to seeing where the future lies for mainland China. But I do think that it's going to be very difficult for the People's Liberation Army to be coerced into trying to do anything of a kinetic nature against Taiwan at this stage.
A lot at stake for sure, as always. Gregory Copley, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te is calling for solidarity among Taiwanese people in the face of mounting threats from China, and Beijing has responded. But first, take a look at what Lai said in his speech on Tuesday.
The current security environment is more severe than ever before. In recent years, the Chinese Communist Party has continued to conduct intensive military aircraft and naval operations around the Taiwan Strait, even combining gray zone harassment and cognitive warfare tactics in an attempt to alter the status quo in the strait and undermine public confidence.
The Chinese Communist Party sees the self-governed Democratic Taiwan as its own, despite never having ruled it. Lai said the Chinese aggression is not only a threat to Taiwan, but a challenge to the democratic free world. September 3rd marks the 80th anniversary of Japan's surrender to China. In a Facebook post Wednesday, Lai said that nationalism, the illusion of superpower status, strict censorship, discreet policing, and leader worshipping all amounted to fascism. President Lai didn't mention any country's name. Beijing responded, accusing Lai for what it called challenging the post-war international order, human justice, and conscience. In the face of China's threats, Taiwan is raising its defense budget this year to over 3% of its GDP and hopes to reach 5% in the next 5 years. That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. Round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.